Where we left off last week was in the Gosho, the opening of the eyes,
Yes.
section 2, and we were on page 272,
Yep.
if my markers are correct. Now, does
Does
everybody have, who has some idea of what we're talking about here? Do you have any recollection of where we were, what it was kind of discussing? No? All right. What he's basically discussing, don't forget, this the opening of the eyes is to sort of explain why, as the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, he has determined that he himself is the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, correct?
Yeah.
And he's trying to address the issue of why that votary would seemingly not be receiving protection, since it seems that he's not receiving protection, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And what he's basically trying to convey is the truth of what the message of the Lotus Sutra is, which is, since we've been discussing this for the last 3 times, what is that truth?
He is Buddha.
Yes, he's the Buddha. What goes with it? What goes with that being the truth?
After the
Persecution by
the
the 3 powerful enemies. Okay, so what he's basically saying is that, effectively, the persecution that you're giving some resistance to believing in what I'm saying is the actual validation that what I'm saying is correct. Do you follow? He's saying, now he's going to go into overdrive saying, like, what about all these predictions in the Lotus Sutra about what the votary will face? Had I not faced those things, then the Lotus Sutra itself would have been false. Okay? Do you understand? So what he's trying to qualify here is, please keep in mind what the Lotus Sutra says. View my life and see that, in fact, these persecutions are not persecutions. They're the validations of my advent and my teaching being the correct teaching. Do you understand? All right, so I'm going to go for the purpose of continuity, I'm going to start on 272 on the second paragraph where it says, now it is some 2,200 years. You got it? You with me?
Yes.
Everybody on page 272 of the opening of the eyes, section 2, in volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. Okay, it is now some 2,200 years since the Thus Come One passed away. Even if it were possible to point straight at the earth and miss it, if the flowers were to cease blooming in the spring, still I am certain that these 3 powerful enemies exist in the land of Japan. If so, then who is it to be numbered among the 3 enemies, and who is to be accounted as a votary of the Lotus Sutra? Do you understand? Okay, so he's saying it is a troubling question. Don't forget, he's writing this to his disciples, and this is from Sado Island, so this isn't with the benefit of hindsight of 700 and some odd years and the propagation of his Buddhism throughout the world. He's saying, and who is it to be accounted a votary of the Lotus Sutra? It is a troubling question. Are we, I and my disciples, to be numbered among the 3 enemies? Or are we to be numbered among the votaries of the Lotus Sutra? A troubling question. In the 24th year of the reign of King Chao, the 4th ruler of the Chao dynasty, with the cyclical sign Kino Tora, on the night of the 8th day of the 4th month, a 5-colored light spread across the sky from north to south until all was as bright as noon. The earth shook in 6 different ways, and though no rain fell, the rivers and streams, wells and ponds brimmed with water. All the trees and plants bloomed and bore fruit. It was a wondrous happening indeed. King Chao was greatly surprised. The grand historian Su Yu performed divinations and announced, a sage has been born in the western region. What about our country? Asked King Chao, to which Su Yu replied, nothing particular will happen for now, but 1,000 years from now the words of this sage will be brought to this country and will bring benefit to all living beings. Su Yu was a scholar of non-Buddhist texts who had not yet freed himself, in the slightest degree, freed himself from the illusions of thought and desire. Yet he was able to know what would happen 1,000 years in the future. And just as he predicted 1,015 years after the Buddha's passing, in the reign of Emperor Ming, the 2nd ruler of the latter Han dynasty, in the 10th year of the Yunping era, which was the cyclical sign Hino To-U, the doctrines of Buddhism were introduced to China. So does everybody understand what he just says? He's saying, so you see, even somebody that was a non-Buddhist had the ability to see this truth. Okay? So you surely as a Buddhist should be able to see this truth. On quite a different level is the prediction I have described that was made by the various bodhisattvas in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures, and the Buddhas from the 10 directions that were emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha. What predictions is he talking about? He's talking about the predictions that the 3 powerful enemies will appear. The predictions made by the bodhisattvas in the encouraging devotion chapter of what kind of difficulty they would meet, or the practitioner of upholding the law in the latter day will meet. You got it? Okay, that's what he's talking about. In view of this prediction of the 3 powerful enemies are going to appear to oppose the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law, how could the 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra help but be present in Japan today? Okay, is everybody with me? Because it kind of gets complicated, but I think if I explain it as we read it, you can understand the sentences. Everybody's with me, right? Clearly? All right. In the Buddha's Successor Sutra, which is another teaching, another sutra, the Buddha is recorded as saying, after my passing during the 1,000 years of the former day of the law, there will be 24 persons in succession who will spread abroad the correct teachings as I have taught them. Everybody knows about the Buddha had 24 successors, right? 24 successors, yes. Mahakashayapa, yeah. After Shakyamuni, as predicted in the sutras, as he talks about here, it's actually in the Buddha Successor Sutra, there's a prediction made that there will be 24 people that will have the clarity to carry on this correct teaching as a lineage beyond Shakyamuni's extinction. Okay, yes. That's where Ananda, that's where Mahakashayapa, that's where Nagarjuna and Ashvagosha and ultimately Tentai and all those guys, they're all part of that 24 people, right? All right, so in the Buddha Successor Sutra, the Buddha is recorded as saying, after, I don't think it's Tentai, but certainly to Nagarjuna, to Nagarjuna. In the Buddha Successor Sutra, the Buddha is recorded as saying, after my passing during the 1,000 years of the former day of the law, there will be 24 persons in succession who will spread abroad the correct teachings as I have taught them. Mahakashayapa and Ananda were contemporaries of the Buddha, and so we will pass them over. But 100 years later, there was the monk Parshva. 600 years later, Bodhisattva Ashvagosha. And 700 years later, Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, along with others, all appearing just as the prophecy said they would. Just as the prophecy had said they would. If so, how could the prophecy in the encouraging devotion chapter of the Lotus Sutra be in vain? So do you understand what he's saying? What did he just say then? He's going, look it. In an inferior sutra to the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha Successor Sutra, the prediction is made about 24 successors to the Buddha will be born. And sure enough, 24 were born. Okay? If that could be true, how could this prediction from the Lotus Sutra of the 3 powerful enemies appearing to oppose the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law not be true? That's what he just said. Do you get it? So he says, if so, how could the prophecy in the encouraging devotion chapter be in vain? If the prophecy were at variance with the truth, then the whole Lotus Sutra would be at variance with the truth. Are you understanding what he's saying? Yeah. Okay. He says, then the predictions that Shariputra will in the future become the thus come one flower glow, and that Mahakashayapa will become the thus come one light bright, would all be mere lies, right? The people of the 2 vehicles can attain Buddhahood. Would never be possible, correct? All right? In that case, the teachings put forward in the sutras that preceded the Lotus Sutra would be absolutely correct, and the voice hearers would be destined never to achieve Buddhahood. Do you understand? Do you understand? I just clarified that. Do you understand? Everybody's with me. All right. The voice hearers would be destined to never achieve Buddhahood. If it were true that one should give alms to a dog or a fox before giving them to a voice hearer such as Ananda, then where would we stand? Do you understand? Because that's what the pre-Lotus Sutra teaching said. They said that because people of the two vehicles could never attain Buddhahood, it was a waste of your freaking time to give them alms. To which they said, Buddha, why are you giving this teaching? That's how we survive. You know, alms is what we eat, right? That's how they get their food. Yet the Buddha says, you might as well give alms to a dog than give alms to these guys. They'll never attain the Buddha way. All right? Are you with me? All right, so he's saying, and so he's saying, all of that changed when and where? In the Lotus Sutra. Where? Only in the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand? All right, so the passage from the Encouraging Devotion chapter mentions three groups of people, saying first that there will be many ignorant people. Second, that in that evil age there will be monks. And referring third to monks wearing clothing of parched rags. The first category of ignorant people are the important lay believers who support monks in the second and third categories. Accordingly, the great teacher Myolo, commenting on the people in the first group, says they represent the arrogance and presumption of lay people. And Tongchung says that they will appeal to the government authority, slandering the law and its practitioners. Concerning the second group of enemies of the Lotus Sutra, the Sutra says, in that evil age there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose they have attained what they have not attained, being proud and boastful in heart. Similarly, the Nirvana Sutra says, in that age there will be evil monks. These evil, ... continuation. These evil men will read and recite this sutra, but they will ignore and put aside the profound and vital principles that the Thus Come One has expounded in it. Everybody's with me, right? Okay. Great concentration and insight. Who would that be? Who? Tentai. Tentai says, if one lacks faith in the Lotus Sutra, one will object that it pertains to the lofty realms of the realm of the sages, something far beyond the capacity of one's own wisdom to comprehend. And if one lacks wisdom, one will become puffed up with arrogance and will claim to be equal to be the equal of the Buddha. We see an example of this in the statement by the meditation master Tao Chao. The second reason for that difficulty in understanding the Lotus Sutra is that its principles are very profound, but human understanding is slight. Honen says religious practices other than the Nimbutsu do not accord with the people's capacities. They do not appropriate for they are not appropriate for the times. Does everybody understand what he's talking about there? What's he talking about there? What's one of the reasons why people had not sought out the Lotus Sutra? What's one of the primary reasons why?
Timing. The timing is
Not only the timing, but I'm talking about...
Delusion.
Delusion, of course, yes. But what has created that delusion or incorrect understanding? Many teachings from teachers that preceded the Daishonin that the Lotus Sutra is too difficult to understand for ordinary people. So ordinary people shouldn't even try. That's the whole point. That's why he's so down on Nimbutsu and Honen specifically. When he talks about the second of the three powerful enemies, and he pulls out Honen, he's going to qualify. The big thing about Honen is Honen said, abandon and discard, right? And why? Not because the Lotus Sutra was baloney, but because it was too difficult. Not 1 in 1,000, not 1 in 1,000,000 people could attain enlightenment. Nimbutsu was the thing for everybody to do, because you could be a brainless twig, right? All you had to do was say it. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So, he's saying, we see an example of this in the statement by the meditation master Tao Chou. The second reason for the difficulty in understanding the Lotus Sutra is that its principles are very profound, but human understanding is slight. Honen says religious practices other than the Nimbutsu do not accord with the people's capacities. They are not appropriate for the times. To combat such views, the 10th volume of On the Words and Phrases reads, what's that? Who wrote that? To combat such views, as I referred to previously in the previous paragraph, and I know you remember what those were since I read them 3 times, right? Okay. Someone wrote something called On the Words and Phrases. What's that? Who wrote that? Miolo. Okay, so commentary on the commentary by Tintai reads, probably those who are mistaken in their understanding fail to realize how great is the benefit gained even by a beginner in the practice of the Lotus Sutra. They assume that benefit is reserved for those who are far advanced in practice and disparage beginners. Therefore, the sutra here demonstrates its power by revealing that practice is shallow, but the benefit that results is profound indeed. That's from Miolo, right? Mm-hmm. The great teacher Dengyo, then declares, the former and middle days are almost over and the latter day is near at hand. Now indeed is the time when the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra will prove how perfectly it fits the capacities of all people. What's he talking about, even though it hasn't been revealed? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the three great secret laws, the Buddhism of the sowing. That's what he's talking about. That's what Dengyo is referring to with his Buddha wisdom, because he knows what the sutra says is going to happen in the fifth half millennium. Right? He's even the one that says, shit, the latter day of the law is about to start, and I'm an old man. I won't see it. Bummer. Remember? Dengyo was completely hip to what was about to flip. That's why he laid down the things that he laid down. Okay? So the ordination platform had been accommodated so that the precepts, meditation, and wisdom, okay, all had been already established in the Buddhism of the harvest. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay. The great teacher Dengyo declares the former and the middle days are almost over and the latter day is near at hand. Now indeed is the time when the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra will prove how perfectly it fits the capacities of all people. How do we know this is true? Because the Peaceful Practices chapter of the Lotus Sutra states, in the latter age hereafter, when the law is about to perish, accept and embrace the Lotus Sutra. So he's saying, because the Lotus Sutra says it will endure in the latter day, I know it's going to endure in the latter day. Do you follow?
Yes.
All right. So he says, and Eshin says, throughout Japan, all people share the same capacity to attain Buddhahood through the perfect teaching. All right? Now he's going to get into qualifying what the perfect teaching is in a minute. Now, which opinion should we believe? That of Tao Cho and Honen, or that of Dengyo and Eshin? Okay, he's asking a simple question. The former has not a scrap of evidence in the sutras to support it. The latter is based firmly upon the Lotus Sutra. Okay? So he says, moreover, the great teacher Dengyo of Mount Hei is, for all priests throughout Japan, the master of ordination into the priesthood. Why? I just said it. That's why I wonder if you guys really understand what I'm talking about, because I did 3 sentences ago. He created the Mahayana ordination platform that fulfilled the ultimate prophecy of Shakyamuni, of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? So he says, so by virtue of doing that, what is he then? That's why he's saying, moreover, the great teacher Dengyo of Mount Hei is for all priests throughout Japan the master of ordination into the priesthood, because they all the Mahayana priests have to go get ordained on the platform at ordination, the Mahayana ordination platform on Mount Hei. Do you understand? Hei, as Rio corrected me a long time ago. All right. How could any priest then? He's saying, if Dengyo said all this stuff, and he's the only reason that you can be a priest, because he created the ordination platform that allows you to be have the precepts bestowed upon you. All right. How could any priest turn their hearts toward a person like Honen? How could you disregard what Dengyo says and embrace what Honen said? And he's kind of got this look on his face when he's saying that. How could you? Okay, who is possessed by the heavenly devil and reject the great teacher Dingyo, the master of ordination. How could any of you priests do this? He's saying shame on all of you. Okay? He's saying then, he says, if Honen was truly a wise man, why did he not, in his new Butsu chosen above all, mention the passages of explanation by Dingyo and Eshin, such as I have quoted above, and resolve this contradiction? He did not do so because he is the kind of person who hides the teachings of others. When the Lotus Sutra speaks of the second type of enemy, saying, in that evil age there will be monks, it is referring to men like Honen, who disregard the precepts and hold perverse views. Do you follow? Because he's disregarding the precepts, because he's disregarding the teachings of Dingyo, who is the bestower of precepts. That's what the ordination platform is, right? It's the bestowal of the precepts. Okay? The Nirvana Sutra says, World Honored One, today I have learned the correct view for the first time. World Honored One, up until today, we all have been people of mistaken views. Miolo explains this by saying, they themselves referred to the three teachings they had practiced until that time as mistaken views. Okay, what were the three teachings they had practiced until that time? The three vehicles, the teaching of the three vehicles, right? Not the one vehicle of the Lotus Sutra. The Dingyo is just referred to, the perfect vehicle, right? Okay, you're with me. Everybody's with me, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I have this highlighted, so let me go check that out for you real quick. Let me read to you why have I got that highlighted. I highlighted that for myself, not for you. So let me see why I have it highlighted. Number 196, hang on. It's a rephrasing of a passage from On the Profound Meaning. The three teachings are the Tripitaka teaching, the connecting teaching, and the specific teaching, which indicate the provisional teachings. Okay, thank you for me not stepping in my own poop there. And Great Concentration and Insight says, the Nirvana Sutra says, up until today, we have been up until today, we have all been people of mistaken views. Mistaken is bad, is it not? The annotations on Great Concentration and Insight says, mistaken is bad, therefore let it be known that only the perfect teaching is good. There are two meanings involved here. Listen very carefully what I'm going to read now. First, what accords with the truth is to be accounted good, and what goes against the truth is to be accounted bad. This is the meaning from the relative viewpoint. Okay, are you with me? All right. Second, attachment to this viewpoint is bad, and transcending it is good. Did you understand what that just said? All right, let me read the whole paragraph and then I'll reread it. This is the meaning from the absolute viewpoint. From both the relative and absolute viewpoints, we should abandon all that is bad. To be attached to the perfect teaching is bad, and to be attached to the other three teachings is of course, even worse. Now, what are the other three teachings? Because I just went to 196 and read you that note.
Yeah.
Tripitaka.
Perfect.
I forgot.
Connecting and specific, right? But all three of them have elements of what? The perfect teaching in them, right? There's four kinds of teaching, right? Okay, so all of them have aspects. There's like, remember he's talking about the perfect teaching here. He refers to them constantly when he's referring to provisional teachings. He's referring to perfect teachings within the provisional. Do you understand? So he's saying, let me go back to that paragraph again. The Nirvana Sutra says, this is the last paragraph in on the first column, page 274. The Nirvana Sutra says, World Honored One, today I have learned the correct view for the first time. World One, Honored One, up until today, we have all been people of mistaken views. Miolo explains this by saying, they themselves referred to the three teachings They themselves referred to the three teachings they had practiced until that time as mistaken views. Okay? So, they had been looking at the Tripitaka and the connecting and the specific teaching as being correct. They only now, by virtue of the Lotus Nirvana, perceive the perfect teaching that is the correct teaching. Do you understand? All right? The great concentration and insight says, the Nirvana Sutra says, up until today we have been people of mistaken views. Mistaken, that would be mistaken views of those first of the four teachings. The Tripitaka, the connecting, and the specific. Those are the mistaken views that they're talking about, okay? Mistaken views is bad, is it not? The annotations on great concentration and insight says, mistaken is bad, therefore let it be known that only the perfect teaching is good. So everybody understands that, right? So Tripitaka, connecting, and specific are bad. In relationship to perfect. Everybody's with me so far, right? But there are two meanings to this when we qualify good and bad to those four teachings. All right? There are two meanings involved here. First, what accords with the truth is to be accounted as good. All right? So, what accords with the truth in the Tripitaka? What accords with the truth in the connecting? What accords with the truth in the specific? Okay? Is to be considered good. All right? And what is considered and what goes against the truth is bad. So do you understand? So everything other than those aspects of the Tripitaka or the specific or the connecting or the specific are bad. Are you following so far what he's saying?
Yes.
So he's saying the aspects that are good are to be embraced. The aspects that are bad are to be left alone. Those are the provisionals. Okay? He's saying then, this is from the meaning of the relative viewpoint. That's a relative perspective. That's based on a teaching in a time period, a teaching in a time period, certain specific sutras and whatever, right?
Yes.
He says, now, second attachment to this viewpoint is bad. So, because if you're attached to that viewpoint, then you still believe that the perfect teaching is in all teachings. Okay? And what we're getting now to is the latter day of the law. So we have to make the distinction of even the Buddhism of the perfect teaching is to be rejected because that's the Buddhism of the harvest. Do you understand? It's no longer the perfect teaching. What is the perfect teaching in the latter day of the law? Something to do with the Buddhism of the harvest? No. This is Buddhism of sowing. It's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? So he's making these distinctions for you to understand and to see that even the sages previous to himself have said exactly the same thing. All he's doing now is revealing what they were talking about all this time with clarity that makes sense and that can be forwarded in history as the correct fifth half millennium continuum that Shakyamuni referred to in the 16th chapter. Do you understand? The whole thing for the latter day of the law has already been laid out. He's the living link between what's been said and what he does. All right, as the votary. All right, so I'm going to read it one more time and keep going.
Okay.
The Nirvana Sutra says, world-honored one, today I have learned the correct view for the first time. And what is he saying? The Nirvana Sutra. So if he's talking in the Nirvana Sutra, what's he saying that about? He's saying that about something he just heard in the Nirvana Sutra. Right? Whoever is making this quote, whoever's speaking is saying, since he's talking in the Nirvana Sutra, he's saying, today I have found out from the Nirvana Sutra something I didn't know before. You follow? Okay, so he's saying, the Nirvana Sutra says, world-honored one, today I have learned the correct view for the first time. World-honored one, the correct view. Okay? Not the view of the perfect versus the connecting versus the... Okay? World-honored one, up until today, we all have been people of mistaken views. We had all thought that the perfect teaching was the perfect teaching no matter where it was, okay? Myo explains this by saying, they themselves refer to the three teachings they practiced until that time. Tripitaka, correct and equal, or pardon me, the three that I just been talking about. Okay, connecting and specific. All right, as mistaken views. All right, because they're not the perfect teaching, right? They only contain elements of it. And Great Concentration and Insight says, the Nirvana Sutra says, up until today, and Great Concentration and Insight is Tentai, right? The Nirvana Sutra says, up until today, we have been people of mistaken views. Mistaken is bad, is it not? Annotations on Great Concentration and Insight says, mistaken is bad, therefore let it be known that only the perfect teaching is good. All right? Therefore, but there are two meanings involved here. First, what accords with the truth is to be accounted good, and what goes against the truth is to be accounted bad. That is the meaning from the relative viewpoint. Second, attachment to this viewpoint is bad, okay, because it's not absolute. All right? And transcending it is good. Transcending it to the Buddha wisdom that you perceive from the Lotus Sutra of what is correct. You understand? Is good. This is the meaning from the absolute viewpoint. The absolute viewpoint would be the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo viewpoint. From both the relative and absolute viewpoints, we should abandon all that is bad. We should abandon all the provisional teachings. All right? To be attached to the perfect teaching is bad. Why? If you're attached to the perfect teaching, you're attached to the provisional aspect of the perfect teaching. Because it's the latter day of the law, right? Everybody understands that now? Okay. And to be attached to the other three teachings is, of course, even worse. So he's saying, now this latter day of the law, attachment to any of the Buddhism of the harvest is bad. Bad. Let's say it again. Bad. Okay? The goods and evils of non-Buddhist creeds when compared, and he's saying, why is it bad? Why can I go of having just said it was good, and now from a relative standpoint is good, but from the absolute standpoint is bad? Okay? And now he's going to qualify it. It all makes sense, okay? Because it's all relative to what is the greater truth. What is real Hinayana? What is real Mahayana? It's not about the teaching. It's about what's more correct. What is the truth? He says, the goods and evils of non-Buddhist creeds when compared with the Hinayana Sutras all represent a bad way. Similarly, the good ways of Hinayana teachings and the four flavors and the three teachings as well, when compared to the Lotus Sutra, are all mistaken and bad. So it's always in comparison to. Do you understand? It's not the relative merit within. It's in comparison to. When a greater teaching has been revealed, that has now become a lesser teaching. All right? The Lotus Sutra alone is correct and good. The perfect teaching of the sutras preached before the Lotus Sutra is so called from the relative viewpoint. From the absolute viewpoint, it must still be counted as bad. Fundamentally, it falls into the category of the three teachings. Therefore, it is bad in that sense as well. To practice the highest principles of the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings, according to the sutras, is still bad. You all following me, right? He's just beating the shit out of the perfect teaching in the first three of the four, right? He's saying, how much more so then is someone who will take a work of insignificant doctrines like the Meditation Sutra, which cannot compare even with the Flower, Garland, and Wisdom Sutras, as a fundamental teaching. Such a person incorporates the ideas of the Lotus Sutra into the Meditation Sutra and urges people to ignore, abandon, close, and discard the Lotus Sutra and believe only in the Nembutsu. This is what Hon and his disciples and lay supporters do, and they deserve to be called slanderers of the correct teaching. Okay? it's a lot easier to understand when you go through it 3 or 4 times, right? Seriously, those paragraphs, if you had just read them the first time through, you wouldn't understand what the hell he was talking about. Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions came to this world to make certain the law will long endure. Why did many treasures come to the ceremony? To validate the law and to make sure it would long endure. All right? What does long endure mean?
Last forever.
The 10,000 years of Mappo and beyond. Okay? Honen and the other Nimbutsu priests throughout Japan declare that in the latter day of the law, the Lotus Sutra will disappear before the Nimbutsu. Are such persons not the enemy of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the other Buddhas? Of course they have to be. Concerning the third group of enemies of the Lotus Sutra, the sutra says, or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement. They will preach the law to white-robed laymen who will be respected and revered in the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. How are we doing on time? Oh, good?
20 minutes.
20
Okay.
minutes.
And the 6, when you all start looking like that, I go, what's going on? Okay. By the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. And the 6-volume Parinirvana Sutra, Parinirvana Sutra states, there are also Ichkantikas who resemble arhats but who commit evil deeds. There are also arhats who resemble Ichkantikas but display merciful hearts. Did you everybody get that? There are some people that look like good people, but they're really evil people.
Yeah.
And there are some
That's
people
right.
that look like evil people, but they're really good
Good
people.
people.
Okay?
Yes, right.
The Ichkantikas who look like arhats spend their time slandering the correct and equal sutras to the populace. You ready? You getting that? The arhats who look like Ichkantikas, on the other hand, are critical of the voice hearers and go about preaching the correct and equal sutras. They address the populace saying, you and I are all bodhisattvas. Why? Because each living being possesses the Buddha nature. But the populace will probably call such men Ichkantikas. Okay? The Nirvana Sutra says, after I have passed away, after the former day of the law has ended, and the middle day of the law has begun, there will be monks who will give the appearance of abiding by the rules of monastic discipline. But they will scarcely ever read or recite the sutras and instead will crave all kinds of food and drink to nourish their bodies. Though they wear the clothes of a monk, they will go about searching for alms like so many huntsmen who, narrowing their eyes, stalk softly. They will be like a cat on the prowl for mice, and they will constantly reiterate these words, I have attained arhatship. Outwardly, they will seem to be wise and good, but within, they will harbor greed and jealousy. And when they are asked to preach the teachings, they will say nothing, like Brahmins who have taken a vow of silence. They are not true monks. They merely have the appearance of monks. Consumed by their erroneous views, they slander the correct teaching. Myolo writes, concerning people of this type, the third group is the most formidable of all. This is because the second and third ones are increasingly hard to recognize for what they really are. And Chung states, the third part that begins, or there will be forest-dwelling monks, deals with members of the clergy who pretend to be sages and use their positions so that they can act as leaders of all the other evil people. As for these members of the clergy who act as leaders of all the other evil people, where in Japan at the present time should we look for them? On Mount Hei, on Anjuji, in Otsu, in Toji, in the temples of Nara, in Kininji, in Kyoto, or Jufuku-ji, or Kincho-ji, in Kamakura. We must examine this carefully. Do the words refer to the monks of the Enraku-ji on Mount Hei who wear helmets on their heads and are dressed in armor? Okay. Do they refer to the monks on Onjoji, who wear suits of mail on their threefold bodies of the law and carry weapons. Does everybody know what that whole thing is about? Okay, Mount Hei is Dengo's original spot, right? And then the True Word guy came along, right?
Yeah.
So you got two competing temples that eventually went to war until they burned they destroyed both of one another. Okay? There goes your ordination platform, Mahayana, or ordination platform, by the way. Didn't last into the latter day a lot. Okay. As the living in the retirement, pardon me. But these men do not resemble the monks wearing clothing of past rags and living in retirement that are described in the sutra, nor do they seem to be the type who are respected and revered by the world as they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. They are not like the men of the third group, who Myolo said are increasingly hard to recognize. It would appear, therefore, that the words refer. So he's qualifying. This isn't Honen. This third of the 3 powerful enemies is not Honen or people like that have disparaged or stretched the teachings out of ignorance or out of a purposeful advantage for themselves. He says, it would appear, therefore, that the words refer to men such as Shoichi of Kyoto and Ryokan of Kamakura. So he's saying it's not the True Word guy or the Nimbutsu guy. It's Two Fires. It's this guy that sent me to Tatsunokuchi. That's Ryokan. Even if they are not identified as such, they should not hate. They should not hate others. Okay, do you understand what he's saying? Let me qualify that so you understand. He says, it would appear, therefore, that the words refer. What are these words? These words that qualify what is the third powerful enemy. That there's a difference between it and the second powerful enemy, right? He's saying, it doesn't seem that the guys on Anjiji are the third powerful enemy. Okay? And it doesn't seem like the other guys are 3. He says, it would appear, therefore, that the words refer to men such as Shoichi of Kyoto and Ryokan. Why? Because they actually have evil. They have an agenda. They don't have a mistaken view of the sutras or have fallen short in studying far enough into the complete teachings of the Buddha. Okay? These are people that really don't believe shit. They're into all of this for their own agenda. Okay? They are truly evil. They are manipulating other people to create harm. They hate. As priests, they should not hate. That's what he's saying. Even if they are identified as such, they should not hate others. If they have eyes, they should examine the sutra's text and compare their own behavior with them. In other words, they're not acting even like priests. At least Honen can try to say, I'm trying to do something even though it's the wrong, incorrect thing. Honen's all game. Ryokan's all games. All politics. All right? Do you understand? You know who I'm talking about. Right. Okay? They're not mistaken. They know exactly what they're doing. That's the distinction. Do you understand? They have malice in their hearts. They're not just fooled. Okay? They're not just mistaken. They know exactly what they're doing. The first volume of Great Concentration and Insight says there has never been anything to compare to the brightness and serenity of concentration and insight. The first volume of On Great Concentration and Insight states, from the time when Emperor Ming of the Han Dynasty dreamed at night of the Buddha down to the Qin Dynasty when the great teacher Tiantai lived, there were many who participated in the Zen school and received the robe and bowl that were handed down. The supplement to Tiantai's 3 major works explains this by saying, the handing down of the robe and bowl refers to the succession of Zen patriarchs from Bodhidharma on down. Everybody understands? Everybody understands Bodhidharma is the guy that started Zen. Okay? And the patriarchs would mean all the guys that were the subsequent head leaders of the school, of the Zen school. the top teachers of the Zen school, right? You with me? The 5th volume of Great Concentration and Insight states there is a type called Zen men, but their masters and disciples are blind to the truth and lame in practice, and both masters and disciples will fall into hell. In the 7th volume, we read, there are 10 ways necessary for understanding and practicing Buddhism correctly. Of these, except one, the 9 ways have nothing in common with the ordinary priests of the world who concentrate on the written word, nor do they have anything in common with the Zen masters who concentrate on practice. Some Zen masters give all their attention to meditation alone, but their meditation is shallow and false, totally lacking in the 9 ways. This is no empty assertion. Worthy persons of the latter ages who have eyes to see will understand the truth of what I say. So what did he just do there? He just blew the shit out of Zen. Zen's a bunch of bullshit. Okay? And he says, I'm not the one that said that. Tentai qualified that for me. I know it to be true, and I'm telling you that it's true. All right? Abandon it. The 7th volume.
Why is the 9 ways?
Huh?
9 ways.
What about the 9 ways?
Totally.
There's actually 10 ways. What about it?
Here, totally lacking in the 9 ways. What does the 9 ways mean?
Where am I missing that? They are, the 9 ways have nothing in
meditation.
common with ordinary. Okay, where are you seeing they're lacking in? Where is this?
Lacking in the 9 ways.
9 ways, yeah. What does 9 ways mean?
9 directions?
Okay, no. Don't forget, okay. The 5th volume of Great Concentration and Insight. Okay, who wrote Great Concentration and Insight?
Tentai.
Tentai. Okay, so this is based on, what is Great Concentration and Insight? The Makashikan. Right?
Yes.
So threefold contemplation in a single moment. Right? Right? So he's saying, I'll read it again because I don't see what you're saying. You keep saying half a sentence and I can't pick it out.
Some Zen masters give all their attention on meditation alone, but their meditation is shallow and false, totally lacking in the 9 ways.
In the 9 ways.
Totally, okay. All right, sorry. Hang on. Okay. He's quoting from the 5th volume of the Makashikan, right? He's saying, it states that there is a type of called Zen men, but their masters and disciples are blind to the truth and lame in practice, and both masters and disciples will fall into hell. Okay, that's from the 5th volume, correct? Right. In the 7th volume, then, he says, we read, there are 10 ways necessary. This is who saying this? This is written in the Makashikan. Who's saying it then?
Tentai.
Yeah, who wrote? Chang'an wrote it.
Chang'an.
Chang'an wrote it, but who said it? Tentai. Chang'an wrote it, but who's he quoting? Tentai. It's Tentai's teaching, right? Okay, so he's saying, so Tentai taught in the Makashikan that there are 10 ways necessary for understanding and practicing Buddhism correctly. This is prior to the Buddhism and sewing, right? This is the focus. This is Great Concentration and Insight. This is threefold contemplation in a single mind, right? This is the way you attain Buddhahood in the middle day of the law, right? Because Nam-myoho Renge-kyo hasn't been brought forth yet, right?
Yeah.
And in that 7th volume, he's saying there are 10 ways, right? Then he goes on to disparage the Zen again in that 7th volume of Great Concentration and Insight by saying they give all their attention to meditation alone, because that's what Zen is, right?
Yeah.
Zen isn't even based on the sutras. Zen is based on some divination of, I don't know. Yeah, it's like you got a little whatever. Okay, it's based on Bodhidharma making it all up. It's all made up.
Yeah.
All right. So he says, let me read it again carefully. Then you'll understand. The 5th volume of Great Concentration and Insight states, Tentai states in the 5th volume, there is a type called Zen men, but their masters and disciples, so everybody that does this, are blind to the truth and lame in practice. And both the masters and the disciples are going to fall into hell. Right? He says in the 7th volume, it reads, there are 10 ways necessary for understanding and practicing Buddhism correctly. Of these, except one, the 9 ways have nothing in common with the ordinary priests of the world who concentrate on the written word, nor do they have anything in common with the Zen masters who concentrate on practice, meditation. Okay? Some Zen masters give all their attention to meditation alone, but their meditation is shallow and false, totally lacking in these 9 ways that I'm talking, these 9 of the 10 ways that I'm saying. In other words, meditation is one of the 10.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay? But they're lacking in the other 9.
Yeah.
And the one of the 10 that they do is bullshit.
Okay.
It's so shallow. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Do you understand now? Lacking in they're completely lacking in the other 9 that are involved in the Makashikan.
Yeah.
Right? Zen and great and threefold contemplation of single mind are 2 different types of meditative practice. They're 2 different teachings, right? One's based on the Lotus Sutra, the other one's based on bullshit, Bodhidharma.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what he's referring to. Totally lacking. The Zen have no association. All right? It's a borrowed and distorted teaching. The 7th volume of On Concentration and Insight states, priests who concentrate on the written words refer to men who gain no inner insight or understanding through meditation, but concern themselves only with the characteristics of doctrine. All they try to do is figure out the understanding that's been given to them rather than ascertain something that's actually coming from their own life. Do you follow? That's mental masturbation. That's acquired enlightenment. That's getting it from something other than what we're talking about, which is actual Ichinen Sanzen, which is what great concentration and insight will lead you to. Led to was actual Ichinen Sanzen, right? Zen can't do actual Ichinen Sanzen. It's lacking in the 10 essential ways. It's lacking in 9 of the 10 essential ways necessary. You follow? That's what he's just said. Zen masters who concentrate on practice refer to men who do not learn how to attain the truth and the corresponding wisdom that would normally come through great concentration and insight's meditative process. Don't forget, there's 10 stages of this, and 10 stages of this, and 10 stages of this, and 10 stages of this in that, right? Okay? In great concentration in the Makashikan. Are you with me? Okay? But instead, they fix their minds on mere techniques of breath control. In other words, they're into the mechanics. They're really not doing anything spiritual because there's nothing spiritual for them to grab onto because they're not practicing the correct teaching. All right? So all they can do is count their breaths or do whatever. They think they're getting somewhere, but they're not really getting somewhere. They think they know what they don't know. They think they're becoming wise, and they're becoming more full of shit because they're becoming more absolute in something that's bad. If it's not true, it's bad, right? If it's not correct, it's bad. You follow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why they're slanderers, even though they have no sense of slander. Follow? Okay, theirs is a kind of non-Buddhist meditation that fundamentally still retains outflows. It still retains delusion, single lifetime, fixation. Are you with me? Some Zen masters give all their attention to meditation alone means that for the sake of discussion, Tentai gives them a certain degree of recognition. From a stricter viewpoint, they lack both insight and understanding. You follow? He's just killing Zen right here. The Zen men, I like that, the Zen men. The Zen men in the world today value only meditation as the way to realize the truth and have no familiarity with doctrinal teachings. In relying upon meditation alone, they interpret the sutras in their own way. They put together the 8 errors and the 8 winds and talk about the Buddha as being 16 feet in height. They lump together the 5 components and the 3 poisons and call them 8 errors. they equate the 6 sense organs with the 6 transcendental powers and the 4 elements with the 4 noble truths. To interpret the sutras in such an arbitrary manner is to be guilty of the greatest falsehood. Such nonsense is not even worth discussing. Okay? So that's why he was saying it so, like, they don't even deal with 9 out of the 10. He's dismissing them from the outset. These are the babiest of the babies. These guys are nuts. They're listening to some dude that does not based on shit, and he's created a whole thing. And everybody's doing it because it's so easy. Because there's no right or wrong to it. It's like, there's no teaching. I think I'll just think about shit for a while. You know? There's no teacher. All right?
That's those
The
purple
seventh-
shirts.
Huh?
Those purple shirts.
Yes, all those purple shirts. The 7th volume of Great Concentration and Insight states, in the past, a Zen master of Ye and Lo became renowned throughout the length and breadth of China. When he arrived, people gathered around him from all directions like clouds, and when he left for another place, they formed a great crowd along the roads. But what profit did they derive from this bustle and excitement? All of them regretted what they had done when they were on their deathbed. In other words, they took the incorrect teacher. In the 7th volume of On Concentration, and yet he was revered in his lifetime as somebody very, very special. He was revered as a great teacher. Everybody came whenever he came to preach. Everybody gathered when he left. In the 7th volume of On Great Concentration and Insight, we read, the text speaks of the Zen master of Ye and Lo. Ye is in Xiangchao and was the capital of Qi and Wei dynasties.
Wei.
Thank you, Qi and Wei dynasties. The founder of Zen caused Buddhism to flourish there and converted the people of the region. The great teacher Tentai, out of deference to the people of his time, refrains from naming anyone specifically. Lo refers to the city of Luoyang. The 6th volume Parinirvana Sutra says, the extreme is impossible to see. That is, the extremely evil deeds done by the Ichikantikas are all but impossible to perceive. Or, as Miolo has said, the 3rd group is the most formidable of all. This is because the 2nd and 3rd ones are increasingly harder to recognize for what they really are. Now, it isn't you thinking, what, didn't we just say that? He says that same phrase several times. And the lecture will speak of that. Those without eyes, those with only one eye, and those with this distorted vision cannot see these 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra who have appeared at the beginning of the latter day of the law. But those who have attained a portion of the Buddha eye can see who they are. They will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, and householders, and Chuchun states, these men will appeal to the government authorities, slandering the law and its practitioners. In the past, when the middle day of the law was coming to an end, Gomyo, Shuin, and other priests presented petitions to the throne in which they slandered the great teacher Dengyo. Now in the beginning of the latter day of the law, Ryokan, Nina, and others drew up false documents and presented them to the shogunate. Are they not to be counted among the 3rd group of enemies of the Lotus Sutra? Nowadays, the teachers of the Nembutsu address the rulers and high ministers, Brahmins and householders, who support the Tendai Lotus School, saying, the principles of the Lotus Sutra are very profound, but our understanding is slight. The doctrine it teaches is extremely deep. Our capabilities are extremely shallow. Just as Great Concentration and Insight says, they object that it pertains to the lofty realm of the sages, something far beyond the capacity of one's own wisdom to comprehend. Again, that's the Nembutsu saying that. Again, the men of Zen school are saying, the Lotus Sutra is a finger pointing at the moon, but the Zen school is the moon itself. Once one has the moon, what use is the finger? Zen is the mind of the Buddha. The Lotus Sutra is the word of the Buddha. After the Buddha has finished preaching the Lotus Sutra and all other sutras, he held up a single flower and through this gesture conveyed his enlightenment to Mahakashayapa alone. As a token of this tacit communication, the Buddha presented Mahakashayapa with his own robe, which together with the Enlightenment has been handed down through 28 patriarchs of India and so on through the 6 patriarchs of China. For many years now, the whole country has been intoxicated and deceived by this kind of falsehood. Does everybody understand what he was just talking about there? That was the story of Zen. That was the story of Bodhidharma. Okay? Again, the men of Zen school, Zen, the whole teaching of Zen is it's superior to the sutras. Okay? That it is the final and greatest teaching of the sutra because it's from the mind, directly of the mind of the Buddha to the mind, directly to the mind of Mahakashayapa. And Mahakashayapa was able to perceive this, and then each one of these big Zen Buddha guys was able to become the Dharma master and the teacher. Okay? And so it's all based on Bodhidharma's teaching. So he says, have been intoxicated and deceived by this kind of falsehood. Again, the eminent priests of the Tendai, so we blasted Zen. He's blasted the eminent priests of the Tendai and the True Word schools, though nominally representative of their respective schools, are in fact quite ignorant of their teachings. In the depth of their greed and out of fear of the couriers and warriors, they compromise with the assertions of the Nimbutsu and Zen followers and sing their praises. Don't forget, we've got a lot of combinings going on at this point in time. Long ago, many treasures Buddha and the various Buddhists who were emanations of Shakyamuni Buddha acknowledged their allegiance to the Lotus Sutra, saying that they would make certain that the law will long endure. That's again in the encouraging devotion chapter, right? But now the eminent leaders of the Tendai school acknowledge the assertion that the doctrines of the Lotus Sutra are very profound, but that human understanding is slight. As a result, the Lotus Sutra exists in Japan today in name only. There is not a single person who actually practices it and attains enlightenment. Not a single person practices the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law in Japan and attains Buddhahood. Not a single one. Who can be called a votary of the Lotus Sutra? We see priests who burn down temples and pagodas and are exiled in numbers too great to count. Those two big schools that I said, fighting all the time. We see numerous eminent priests who fawn on the couriers and warriors and are hated for it by the people. Can men such as these be called the votaries of the Lotus Sutra? So again, he's qualifying all of these questions. He's saying a lot of rhetorical questions after rhetorical questions after rhetorical questions. I'm going to sit here and go, where does this finally end? It ends with this question. Answer. So these have all been questions. I'm about to finish. This has all been questions. So good. We'll finish right on time. Okay.
We passed the time already.
Because the predictions of the Buddha are not false, the 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra already fill the country. We're in the home stretch. And aren't you happy to read the actual Gosho and understand it?
Yeah.
Okay? Because the predictions of the Buddha are not false, the 3 types of enemies of the Lotus Sutra already fill the country. And yet, as though to belie the golden words of the Buddha, there seems to be no votary of the Lotus Sutra. How can this be? How can this be? You get what he's saying? He's saying, it's me. But he's saying, how can it be that there isn't one? Can't be that there isn't one. Gotta be one. Get it? So, let us consider, who is it who is cursed and spoken ill of by the populace? Who is the priest who is attacked with swords and staves? Who is the priest who, because of the Lotus Sutra, is accused in petitions submitted to the courtiers and warriors and almost got his head cut off? Who is the priest who is again and again banished, as the Lotus Sutra predicted? Who else in Japan besides Nichiren has fulfilled these predictions? But I, Nichiren, am not a votary of the Lotus Sutra because, contrary to the prediction, the gods have cast me aside. Who then, in this present age, will be the votary of the Lotus Sutra and fulfill the prophecy of the Buddha? The Buddha and Devadatta are like a 4-minute shadow. In lifetime after lifetime, they are never separated. Prince Shotoku and his archenemy Moriya appeared at the same time, like blossom and calyx of the lotus. If there exists a votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the three types of powerful enemies are bound to exist as well. The three types of enemies have already appeared, right? I've just already qualified that. They're here. So, but now where's the votary? Who then is the votary of the Lotus Sutra? Let us seek him out and make him our teacher. As the Lotus Sutra says, to find such a person is as rare as for a one-eyed turtle to chance upon a piece of driftwood with a hole just the right size for it. Someone may raise this question. It would surely appear that the three types of enemies are present today, but there is no votary of the Lotus Sutra because I'm not being protected, you think. If one were to say that you, Nichiren, are the votary. Again, now he's going into third person. That's why it's going to say answer. If one were to say that you, Nichiren, are the votary of the Lotus Sutra, then the following serious discrepancies would become apparent. The Lotus Sutra states the young sons of heavenly beings will wait on him and serve him. Swords and staves will not touch him, and poison will have no power to harm him. It also reads, if the people speak ill of and revile him, their mouths will be closed and stopped up. It states, they who have heard the law will enjoy peace and security in their present existence, in good circumstances and future existences. It also states, if there are those who trouble and disrupt the preachers of the law, their heads will be split into 7 pieces like the branches of the Arjaka tree, like it's on the Gohonzon. Furthermore, it reads, in this present existence, they, the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, will gain the reward of good fortune. And it adds, if anyone sees a person who accepts and upholds this sutra and tries to expose the faults or evils of that person, whether what he speaks is true or not, I like that part, he will in his present existence be afflicted with white leprosy. How do you explain these discrepancies? Answer. And then he goes on to answer it, but President Kate is going to answer it. Okay, so these are the 10 pages from 268 to 278 that he referred to previously, and we didn't ever get to persecution by sword and staff. I hope to before we are done. But next week we will start on chapter 11, page 103. All right, everybody with me?
Yes.
Was that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, when we go into chapter 11, if you remember what I just read to you from the sutra, from the Gosho, you're going to go, oh, now I get it. Now I get it.
Yeah, I can remember that
Now
now.
I get it.
I okay?
Okay?
Okay.
See you then. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.